everyone. I am so excited that you're back to our Bible study with the Podium Show at Macquarie Full Gospel Church. I am so excited that you've decided to return. For those of us that weren't with us the last time, we are doing a Bible study going through the life of Jesus. We want to understand who is this man that is the center of our faith. What does the Bible say about him? What should I know about him? How does he make my life better? So last week we had a video introducing us to the book of Luke. Who wrote Luke? All that, if you need to know more details, just click on the previous episode and you will know. Also, our major lesson from last week was the thoroughness of Luke when he was writing the book of Luke. And we said that we should employ that same thoroughness as we search for the truth, as we go through the Bible. We should employ the same thoroughness so that we will find truth completely. Now this week we are continuing with the book of Luke chapter 1. We are going through the events that happened before Jesus was given birth to and trying to understand what does that mean for us today. So we are starting from Luke chapter 5, okay? And I'm going to read it. It says, "The birth of John the Baptist foretold. In the time of Herod, king of Judea, there was a priest named Zachariah." Now, as we go through the book of Luke, you realize that Luke wanted people to understand that Jesus really existed. So he uses a lot of "in the time of Herod" at this time so that people can actually locate the time in history and say, oh, it was around this time period that this man existed. So when he says, "In the time of Herod, king of Judea, there was a priest named Zachariah." Now, according to even to Bible scholars, they say that statement, "there was a priest called Zachariah," is also a pointer to time, because they had rotations in those days of who was priest, who would become priest to go into the temple to sacrifice for the children of Israel. So even that right there, Luke is pointing time for us. So he says, a priest named Zachariah, who belonged to the priestly division of Abijah, and his wife Elizabeth, who was also a descendant of Aaron. Verse 6, "Both of them were upright in the sight of God, observing all the Lord's commandment and regulations blamelessly." I highlighted that in my Bible. When you're doing Bible study, it's important that you highlight things that stand out for you. I highlighted that in my Bible study because I was wondering, what can a man do in order that even before the sight of God they are blameless? When I read this, I realized that Elizabeth and Zachariah were not only giving lip service to the commandments of God, they were actually living them out, and it was coming from an inward place. So many times we think we can please God by lip service and by doing things that look so that people say, "Hey, that girl is very nice. Oh, she goes to church, she does that." But in order for you to be right in the sight of God, it's more than just that. It's about the motive of why you're doing what you're doing and what is driving you to do what you're doing. So that's something that we can remember from this. 7, "But they had no children because Elizabeth was barren and they were both very old in years." So these are people that were following the Lord, doing what he commanded, not only as actions as the Pharisees did, but also from an inward place, to the extent that even God was like, these people are right by my standards. But there was a barrenness in their lives. Elizabeth was super old now, and she had never ever given birth, and that was a shame in those days. And in those days, it was always, put upon the woman, or they used to say, you're very sinful, you've annoyed God in some way. And so it's something that didn't only hurt them because they didn't have children, but it also hurt them, their reputation before people. And so many times, we do the right things, we serve God with all of our heart, but then things don't seem to always be going right. And some people have taken that and said, "Oh, because I'm barren in this place, I'm going to go look for my own means." We saw that happen with Abraham in the Old Testament. The angel of the Lord came to him and told him, "You're going to have a son as promised by the Lord with Sarah, your wife, who is super old." And then Sarah tells Abraham, "Man, I'm very old and the years have passed since we had this promise. Go sleep, go have time with my maid, and then you guys have children, and maybe that's how the Lord wanted to fulfill his promise. And so many times when we feel that we are being faithful to the Lord and things are not working out, maybe you're not performing so well in school, chemistry is giving you a hard time, yet you pray, and there's some people who are making even fun of you and saying, hey, you pray, you're in scripture union, but you are failing. That barren place in our lives. And so we are tempted to look for our own means. Yes? Let's see, what did Elizabeth do? Or what did Zechariah do? What did God do in this story? So we all have those places of barrenness. Let's continue with the story. Verse 8 says, once when Zechariah's division was on duty and he was serving as priest before God, he was chosen by lot, according to the custom of the priesthood, to go into the temple of the Lord and burn incense. And when the time for burning the incense came, all the assembled worshippers were praying outside. Now, as God had planned it. He saw these people following him with all of his heart. They had a barrenness in their life. Time came, it was time to choose a priest. This priest, it was very biblical. It happened a lot of time. It was time to choose a priest, and they cast lots in those days. What would we call lots today? Yeah? Like probability. They say, if this lands on this person, then this person is going to do what we want to do. So they cast lots. Nowadays at school you like to throw the coin. If it's tails, then you wash for me. If it's heads, then I wash for you. That sort of thing. So they cast lots, and the lot fell on Zechariah. So Zechariah had the high honor opportunity to go at the temple, go into the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of God was, the presence of God, the Ark of the Tabernacle was, and pray for the nation of Israel. He had that unique opportunity. And I bet he felt really blessed, but he'd been preparing this probably for all his life, because it only happened once in your lifetime. So that is what is happening here. So it comes time, Zechariah goes inside the temple. The people who can't go into the temple because they're sinful stay outside of the temple, and Zechariah goes in and begins to pray. Let's see what happens. Then the angel of the Lord appeared to him standing at the right side of the altar of incense. When Zechariah saw him, he was startled and was gripped with fear. But the Lord said to him, "Do not be afraid. Your prayer has been heard." I highlighted that in my Bible, and I'm wondering, what prayer is the angel talking about? Is it the prayer that Zechariah was saying at that time? And he was probably praying for the nation of Israel. That was the right thing to do. You have an opportunity to be in the Holy of Holies with the Ark of the Tabernacle. You go in there and you pray for the nation. You don't pray for your selfish. You know what people say? It's so selfish if you're only praying for yourself all the time. So he was probably praying for the nation of Israel. So I'm like, is the angel saying that your prayer for the nation of Israel has been answered? Or is he talking, but let's continue. It says, your wife Elizabeth will bear a son, and you are to give him the name John. So we don't know. I don't know if Zechariah was praying for his son at that moment. I highly doubt that he was praying for his son, because this was, like they told us, his wife was very old. He was also very old. But you see, so many times we think that prayer is only the things that we say to God. But the Bible tells us that God searches our hearts, and he knows our hearts, and that he meets us at our very point of need. Sometimes it's not about what you're saying, but about what your heart is saying. Here was Zechariah praying for salvation, praying for the children of Israel, praying that the Lord may speak at this time. The Lord has taken long without speaking to the children of Israel. There's no prophet specifically to speak to the children of Israel from the Lord, praying that the Lord may speak to his people. But then the angel of the Lord comes and says, Zechariah, you will have a son. Amazing. And it's important that we continue communing, even when we're in that place of infertility like Elizabeth and Zechariah were. It's important that we continue communing with the Lord. And the Lord who searches our hearts shall meet us at the right time. When we are weak and we think we are powerless, he shall meet us, and he shall revive us, and he shall transform us, and he shall show us beautiful and powerful things. like he showed Elizabeth and Zachariah. So before I end, I want to let you know that, I love this story because it speaks of something that is so real for all of us. We all try our best to serve the Lord. If you're a Christian, for instance, we try to seek him, but we fall short in so many places. We become infertile in so many places. And if it's not us who are becoming infertile, it might be like Elizabeth and Zechariah. It's just a place of infertility in your life. It's not that you're not doing, it's just something that's out of your control. But God is telling us, even in those places, he is hearing us. Even in those places, when we continue to seek him and commune with him, he will send his word. He will send his salvation. He will send that miracle. He will revive us. He will give us the encounter that we need because he loves us. So next time we're going to continue the story of Jesus, Elizabeth, Zechariah, what happens next. But it's amazing that before the greatest gift that arrived on earth, who is Jesus Christ, God begins to speak to the nation of Israel through this family in this way. He's saying, what infertile place do you have? I can perform a miracle. I can change it. I am adequate enough to cause things to be even when you're powerless. Thank you so much for joining us for our Bible study. I hope you enjoyed that. Please make sure that you read from Luke. We're still on chapter 1. Please read from where we've stopped. We've stopped on verse 13. So please read from Luke chapter 1, verse 14, and let's see what next. Thank you.